Hi guys. So today's video is going to be a recommendations video. If any of you have read the Stormlight Archive series, I'm going to be talking about some other books that I think share some really great elements that these books contain. If you haven't read the Stormlight Archive series, but you're still interested in seeing what other books I recommend and what those elements are that I think make these books so fantastic, I'm going to give a little bit of a brief synopsis, which isn't the easiest thing to do with the series since all the books are massive. But these books follow a large cast of characters who live in a place called Roshar, which is a land that is plagued by these catastrophic natural disasters. They happen frequently and they happen so much that it has shaped the entire world down to the plant life, the animal life, even the way that the architecture looks. As you can imagine then, the world building is done so fantastically. I haven't really seen too many other stories that even come close to the level of world building with these, but alongside the fantastic world building is also extremely well done character development. Great world building to me is kind of like icing on the cake, but if you don't have the substance to go with it, it just isn't the same. And with this book, that is not an issue. The characters are so well developed. They are so fleshed out and have so much depth. And for that reason, that's part of why some of the books I'm going to recommend, I would say, go along well with these. I am not going to recommend any other Sanderson books because I think it's pretty obvious if you like Stormlight Archive, you're probably going to look into some of Sanderson's other works. But the other things that I'm going to mention that you might be interested in, I think pull mainly from fantastic world building and great character development. The first of these recommendations would be the Strongbow Saga by Judson Roberts. I recommend these quite often as is because I think they're phenomenal books, but I do think there are some parallels between Kaladin from the Stormlight Archive and Halfdan from the Strongbow Saga. This is a historical fiction series that follows a son of a Viking chieftain and an Irish princess who ended up as a slave. And so the story itself doesn't seem like it would have much in common or really fit when it comes to being a recommendation with fans of Stormlight Archive, but I think that the story arc for the character Halfdan is very similar in a lot of ways to the story arc of Kaladin. And for me personally, Kaladin's story arc is what made me fall in love with the Stormlight Archive series. I love so many things about Stormlight Archive, but Kaladin's story is what makes it so that I constantly think about Stormlight. I'm constantly thinking about that series when I'm reading a different series and I compare things, sometimes, most of the time unintentionally. And I just think that with the Strongbow Saga, Halfdan's story of going from somebody who is a slave and looked down upon and has to work his way up is very similar to Kaladin's story. The next recommendation would be the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown, and this I think actually fits having both a similar story arc between, once again, the character Kaladin and the main character Darrow from the Red Rising series. Not only does it have that, but it also has really fantastic world building as well. Red Rising is technically a science fiction book. It is supposed to take place in the very far future, and so a lot of the world is supposed to be just our planets. But what I've found sometimes with science fiction that actually you wouldn't think, but I personally find to be kind of true of a lot of the sci-fi I've read, the world building is sort of better, weirdly enough, than the world building in fantasy. Sometimes fantasy relies on just somebody's vague idea of the Middle Ages, and then sci-fi, you have to really make this future or this different world seem believable, and sometimes that causes the world building to be better in science fiction. But Stormlight Archive doesn't suffer from that. It truly feels like it could be a real world. There's so much detail put into it, and that I think is very true of the Red Rising series as well. The premise of the Red Rising series is that society is broken up into various colors, and one of our main characters is part of a color group that is oppressed, and as the name implies, there is a rising of the Reds. So I think just how the society is set up is somewhat similar to how the society is in the Stormlight Archive books, because while it's not colors, as in people are literally grouped into colors, it is grouped by eye color. So there are the light eyes, who are the elite, and the dark eyes, who are the lower classes. And so I think that is another parallel between the two series. Not only that, but once again, similarly to the Strongbow Saga, this series follows a character who is starting from the bottom, and Kaladin, once again, is a character that I think has a similar kind of arc. So if you're a fan of those kinds of arcs, I think both Red Rising and the Strongbow Saga would be good ones to check out. Now switching to a different character, because I have kind of compared a couple of characters to Kaladin from the Stormlight Archive series, but there is another character that is very beloved, and that would be Dalinar. And I think Dalinar's character in a lot of ways is very similar to the character Vaylin from Bloodsong by Anthony Ryan. In general, I wish that way more people would read Bloodsong because it's fantastic. The setup of the story is actually very similar to the setup of Name of the Wind. When you first meet our main character Vaylin, he's getting ready to tell his life story, and then we go into his life story, and he has been going to this school where he is being trained to become the most elite of soldiers. And Vaylin's character is one that is extremely honorable, and he's always trying to do the right thing, and he is kind of a mellow character, but he has a lot of power in his quiet. And the fact that he is not necessarily outspoken and always in people's faces, I think that he has this reservation that means when he speaks, it matters. And I find that to be very similar to Dalinar's character. So any of you that are fans of Dalinar from the Stormlight Archive series, I think you'll like Vaylin from Bloodsong. The next series I'm going to recommend is actually a manga and an anime, so you can check out either of those, but I think if you like Stormlight, you'll probably enjoy Fullmetal Alchemist. This is the series that follows two brothers, and there is alchemy in their world, and they kind of commit the ultimate sin of trying to use alchemy to bring their mother back from the dead. Things don't go so well. One brother loses an arm and a leg, and the other's entire body is lost, and his soul has to be attached to a body of armor. What the heck does that have to do with Stormlight? I mentioned before that I think Stormlight has some of the best character development, as well as having a large cast of characters, and I think that the only other series that even comes close to having that many characters and that many fleshed out characters is this one. While I gave you the vague premise of the two brothers, the Elric brothers in Fullmetal Alchemist, there are so many other characters that have so many amazing plot lines, and it's anywhere from the best of the best characters to extremely morally gray to just flat out bad guys. And they're all interesting. Some of them you hate, some of them you love, but regardless, they're all fascinating characters, and they are so well done. The last recommendation I have for fans of Stormlight Archive series would be Temeraire by Naomi Novik. There is one reason why I think that this series is good for fans of Stormlight, and that would be the relationship between the main character and his dragon, Temeraire, and the parallels that that has to Kaladin and his relationship with sort of kind of another character who I don't want to say because I don't want to spoil anybody who hasn't read it. When our main character in the Temeraire series encounters the dragon and befriends the dragon and becomes the dragon's handler, the dragon starts off as a baby, and it is very childlike and it is very precious. And that is very similar to the relationship between Kaladin and his buddy in the Stormlight Archive series. These books take place in an alternate history. It's the Napoleonic era, but with dragons, and our main character, the dragon's handler, is a soldier. And that's somewhat similar to Kaladin's story, for those of you that know Kaladin, and both men have a similar demeanor. They are both sort of quiet and to themselves and very dutiful, and I think that seeing these somewhat rugged, dutiful men have these relationships with these childlike characters, it's very heartwarming and it's very sweet, and it's a lot of fun. That would be it though for my recommendations for those of you who are fans of the Stormlight Archive series, or if you've read any of those series, maybe that gives you reasons to pick up Stormlight Archive. Let me know what books you would recommend for fans of the Stormlight Archive series and why, because I love this series, so I'm always looking for other books that are similar to it. If you'd like to see more Sanderson related content, I'll go ahead and link my Sanderson playlist over here. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.